as recent as about 1678, when Marquette was coming out to Madeline Island to visit our tribal people, he had to take a 2-day detour around Duluth because there was a huge Dakota encampment at Duluth. And a story that nobody knows, and I think it's a real cool one, we are Ojibwe people. I'm from Bad River, Wisconsin. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. It's right up by Ashland, Wisconsin. Our federal name is the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Chippewas. So Dad always said, be proud of who you are. So I run around as a little kid. I'm Indian, you know, what kind of, I'm Chippewa. Well, then when I got to be a teenager, somebody told me, oh, that's a name the white people give us, you know. Really, we're Ojibwe. Oh, okay. So I was Ojibwe all the way up till I was about 45 years old. Then I was doing a grand opening at the Smithsonian in New York. And this one guy who was of my people from Canada was interacting with me on emails and stuff to get set up. And I get there to the Indian Center in Manhattan. And he's taking me down, introducing me to everybody as a Anishinaabe brother. When we left, I said, Clint, what's a Anishinaabe? Oh, that's the real name of our people. Ojibwe is our language, and the white man named us Chippewas. And what's really funny about the name Anishinaabe, and if you research most any of the traditional, whatever that word means, tribal names, they all mean the first people, original people, or the people. And that's all Anishinaabe means, is the people. We weren't real ornate on creating names. And even, I didn't know this, and our little village back home is called Odena. And it was always Odena, you know. When I got to be about 10, I guess, I asked Grandma, what's Odena? You know, what's that mean? Oh, the village. I said, yeah, the village of Odena. What does it mean? It means the village. That's all it means.
The village of the village.
Yeah. And then we're supposed to say it Odena. But, so the history of all that stuff is kind of different. But one time, many, many years ago, our people decided that we were going to kick the Sioux out of Mille Lacs because they controlled one of the biggest wild rice beds by Mille Lacs Lake up north. So we called all our people together from Sault Ste. Marie all the way to Duluth and said, you're going to come help us take on the Dakota. And the Grand Island people up by Sault Ste. Marie, they were one of the few groups of our Ojibwe people that really weren't fighters. We were pretty famous for fighting. So they went to the Grand Islanders and said, you're going to come help us take on the Sioux, or we'll kill you ourselves. You know, you're going to come and fight. So they were pretty nervous about it. So the women painted the guys up in the most grotesque war paint they could to try to scare the Dakota people. And they went over by Mille Lacs and started fighting. And we got beat up pretty bad in that fight. So our people all started retreating. And the people from Grand Island were such ferocious fighters that the Dakotas actually offered to let them go. They said, no, if we turn and run, our own people will kill us. But we want one guy to run back home and tell our people what happened to us. So they let the one runner go back and tell them the story of those guys all getting killed. And so they were wiped out, and the women and kids all moved over with the Sault Ste. Marie tribe. But that story of history just don't exist in the history books, and I think that's kind of sad. I think we should all try to pick up more about it, just like where you're at right now. You're at the crossroads of the Indian world. There was a huge Mandan village up north of here many, many, many years ago. And Highway 75 right here was called the King of Trails. It runs from Hudson Bay to Mexico. It's actually a corridor about 15 miles either side of the road, so it goes on the edge of Sioux Falls even. And it goes all the way to Mexico. Highway 3034 right down here at McDonald's in the middle of town. Runs from Wisconsin to Wyoming. That was called the Old Sioux Trail. That goes all the way out west. The people all came here to get this stone. they found this stone and they proved it was from this quarry with a big test they did in Chicago about 10 years ago. Because they found pipestone all over North and South America, but they always said, oh, that was from another quarry. Because the Park Service out here had their program showing they only used this quarry for about 1,000 years. And I kept telling them that was way wrong. And finally the previous superintendent came up with, well, who did this study? So I gave him the name of the professor at the University of Illinois and all that kind of stuff. And he checked it all out. And now they've changed their program, and it shows that they've been using this quarry, the Park Service does, for nearly 3,000 years. That's kind of a big deal. There's another quarry up by Kenora, Canada, called Lake of the Eagles, where the Blackstone comes from. If you look into the history of old pipes, many of the old pipes were black ones. As far as I can tell, they used that quarry up there years before they started using this red quarry. It works about the same, a little bit harder, but a geologist said the chemical composition is mostly identical to what we have out here, but this didn't have time to rust, basically. The iron oxide in it stayed black because it got heated and compressed fast enough. Where with the red stone, it cooled slower and the iron oxide got rusty. So that's how you got the red pipestone. But there's all kinds of cool stories about all of our tribal history. In the Indian world, everything has a reason. So even if you don't have a reason, you'll make a reason. And one my grandma used to tell us, and I found that it was used by many people, was the Wendigos. Of course, when I was a little kid, we didn't have electricity or running water. You know, we had an outhouse. And at night, Grandma would burn the kerosene lamp for half an hour and get everything settled for the evening, and she'd blow it out because that gallon of kerosene would last for a month that way. And then she'd tell us stories, and her and Grandpa would smoke their pipes. So she's telling us this story about the Wendigo. The Wendigo is really big and really ugly, and he really stinks. And he loves to eat dirty little children. If you go outside at night, he hides behind the trees and he waits for you. And the more he eats, the hungrier he gets, and the hungrier he gets, the more he eats, and the more he eats, the bigger he gets, and the hungrier he gets. So you don't want to go outside at night. And that actually has a base in a bunch of our kind of a different group of spiritual people. But if you can imagine being a little kid and you got to go potty at 10 o'clock at night, man, you don't want to run that block to the outhouse. You know, the Wendigos might get you out there. And it kept kids from sneaking out of the house. And when we were living in lodges, you know, that was a pretty big deal. You had a lot of bears out there, a lot of creatures that could hurt you. So it was just as easy to tell stories to the little kids and say, man, I ain't going to go out there, you know. But there's merit to most of the stories. One I liked quite a bit about these quarries. Long time ago, the Creator put man on earth. And he put us in different regions, and we were all given gifts of certain foods that were in our region. And he figured everybody'd be happy and just get along. And after a while, we really got tired of eating wild rice. You know? Maybe some buffalo would be really good to go with that. So we started going out of our area and fighting with the other people. And pretty soon all the people were fighting with each other all the time. And Creator looked down, the earth ran red with the blood of our people. And he was pretty upset with us. So he called all the people together. Said, you guys got to quit fighting. And he reached down and he broke off a piece of that blood that had coagulated and gotten hard and made a pipe. Said, I want everybody to smoke this pipe and promise to quit fighting with each other. Well, nobody picked up that pipe because what if you smoked it and I didn't, and I might come kick your butt, you know? So everybody's just kind of sitting there trying to figure out what to do. Finally, this little kid comes running out, grabs that pipe and runs off with it. Everybody laughed. They thought that was pretty funny. And that broke the ice and they all smoked the pipe. And that's how this got to be known as a place of peace. And that's how the Pipestone got to be called Bloodstone by quite a few people. And I think that's a pretty cool story. And many of the tribes have a reason for using a pipe a long time ago. And they all come together because nothing was working out. You know, food wasn't available, it was too hot and too cold and just a mess. And they decided that the Creator was up above, that somebody had to go talk to him. And he wasn't hearing them. A big blue heron. He says, I got these great big wings. I can fly really high when I want to. I just don't usually do that. But I'll go up and talk to him. So that big heron takes off and he circles higher and higher. Pretty soon the air gets too thin and his big wings won't lift. He glides back down to earth. Couldn't make it. Mighty eagle comes along and says, everybody knows I can fly higher than anybody. I'll go up and talk to Creator. That big eagle takes off and he circles higher and higher and higher. Pretty soon the air gets really too thin. He can't get the lift he needs. He glides back to us. Couldn't make it. I don't know what we're going to do. Finally a little hummingbird comes along. He says, hey, let me try. I can fly really fast. Everybody laughed at him. He's just a dumb little hummingbird. But they didn't have nobody else saying they're going to try it. So that little hummingbird takes off. Bzzz, boy, he's really going. And he gets up pretty high, and pretty soon it gets so cold that his little wings won't go as fast as they're supposed to. So he glides back down to earth. Couldn't make it. It was too cold. My wings wouldn't go. I know what we're going to do. Well, everybody's sitting around kind of stewing about it. They didn't know what the heck they're going to do. Finally, that little hummingbird comes back. He says, I got an idea. He said, how about if I get on the back of that eagle? And I snuggle down and nice warm feathers up by his neck. And he takes me up as high as he can go, and then I can go from there because I'll be warm. Everybody laughed at him. They thought that was really stupid. But nobody had a better idea. So that little hummingbird gets up on the back of that eagle and snuggles down. Nice warm feathers. That big eagle takes off. And he's circling higher and higher. Whew. He's starting to sweat. He can't even get as high as he got before because he's carrying a hummingbird on his back. He says, you're going to have to go. I can't go in here. The little hummingbird sticks his nose out. It's cold out here. I got to go really fast. So he takes off. He gets all the way up to the home of Creator. He tells him about all the trouble we're having here on earth. What can we do for him to hear us? And the Creator says, you take this kinnikinnick. It's the inner bark of the red willow. We didn't have leaf tobacco years and years ago. And you take that back down there, and if somebody wants to talk to me, they can say a prayer. They can put it by a tree, or put it in their pipe, or put it in the fire, and that smoke will carry the prayer up to me. That poor little hummingbird says, nobody's going to believe that dumb story. They'll think I didn't even get here. And Creator says, no, I'm going to give you a special gift that'll show you really got here. And he gave him a beautiful ruby necklace to wear. Boy, that little hummingbird was pretty proud of that. He glides back down to earth and strutting around showing everybody this beautiful necklace he got and telling them the story on how to say their prayers. If you don't believe that story, take a look at that hummingbird today. He's still wearing that ruby necklace. The big deal about the pipestone is that it's almost impervious to heat. And in the old days, you could actually work it with flint tools. You see how easy it is to start taking the corners off? We've actually done classes on making pipes all over the world. And the whole pipe, she got done in her mind, and it was just like that, with this really coarse file. And I said, do you want me to sand it some more, or get some help, or what? Nope, it's fine the way it is. I said, you want me to drill it? Yeah, I'm scared to drill it. So I drilled it for her. And of course she finished it in one day. Usually it's a 2-day class. And so she got all done, and at the end of the day, she says, gee, I finished my pipe. Could I maybe make another one? I said, yeah. If you want to buy another blank, you can make another one. When we finished up the class, she gifted me that for teaching the class. I thought that was pretty cool. But you can hear some of the noise now. This blackstone's got some quartz in it. You can hear the difference in the sound of the fire. It's having a hard time right there. This story is just another story But supposedly when the missionaries came, everything had to represent the cross. The cross was a big, big deal. So they put a nose on the pipe and you got a cross. And then what are you going to do with that pipe? That became what most people today call a woman's pipe or a personal pipe. That's a real pretty spotted piece of stone. Okay? So you push the file away from you and keep your fingers off it. Okay.
So stand like, yep.
We're gonna have to taste it.
Yeah.
Whether it's round or not is just up to your eye and your hand.
I'm amazed at how fast it cuts.
Yeah.
What do you do when you don't have that metal on?
Now, are there other pieces?
It's a good thing I have safety glasses on.
Other,
Yeah, we've got
Mission Nabe.
Mission Nabe song.
yeah. So anybody wanna pick a piece?
usually about this time of year they'll start pouring.
We, our family has had that exchange.
Remember last summer you guys
That's what I thought.
remember you guys made those hearts last summer? And so can we buy some of these from you?
Sure.
And then the kids can eat.
I have 8 brothers.
I know.
It's also good for a little bump on the head. You know?
I hadn't thought about that either.
So we can use this like for like at these students or
Yeah, I think it's